Good evening. I'd like to call the regular board meeting for the Toledo Public Schools Board of Education to order for November 30th, 2021. Mr. Schulte, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Barwick,
Present.
Ms. Barnes,
Present.
Mrs. Eichenberg,
Here.
Mr. Vasquez. Here. Mrs. Gerken.
Here. Thank you. We'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance, and we have special guests tonight to do that. Will you please stand?
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd like to call for a moment of silence on behalf of Jalen Pryor. Would you please stand? Thank you. Dr. Durant, the mission and vision, please.
Yes, Toledo Public Schools' mission is to produce competitive college and career-ready graduates through a rigorous curriculum across all grade levels by implementing Ohio's new learning standard with fidelity. Our vision statement strives to be an A-rated school district with graduates are college and career ready. Thank you.
Thank you, and I will turn it back over to you for presentations then.
Yes, I would turn this over to Ms. Mazur.
Thank you and good evening. Tonight we are welcoming, we have the podcasting club from Chase STEM Academy here. Teachers at Chase STEM Academy are always presenting challenging curriculum and engaging projects to their students with the goal of introducing them to new ideas while engaging them in science, technology, engineering, math, or science. Recently, Mr. Ryan Ackerman, the 7th and 8th grade science and social studies teacher at Chase, introduced his students to the idea of podcasting. We have a video that highlights how Mr. Ackerman is working with the students to gain a greater understanding of podcasting and how the experience is exposing them to other key communication and leadership skills.
My name is Ryan Ackerman, and I am the 7th and 8th grade science and social studies teacher. Part of being at a STEM school, we are able to come in the Catalyst lab, and part of being in the Catalyst lab is professionally working on something. One of my professional goals was to create an outlet for students to have a voice. Me being a listener of podcasts, I thought, hey, why not we start a podcast and just create that outlet for students to be able to talk about things that are interesting to them.
Well, one of the things was it was, for me, the most interesting out of all the clubs available at the school. I've listened to a couple podcasts. I thought, I'll do that too.
Well, I've always wanted to talk inside of a microphone. And I just like people listening to me.
This has been a wonderful opportunity for the students involved in the Catalyst Lab experience to really utilize pieces of equipment that haven't been available to them before, and to really look at communication and technology as a forum for learning and sharing their information and learning about others.
I'll be honest, the kids didn't even know what a podcast was. So we listened to a podcast, and then we started out with just conversation. Let's talk about your favorite ice cream. And I was like, well, let's get into some content. Let's interview people in the building.
Well, I came in to talk to the kids about their podcast and to see how they're doing it and to see if they had any questions that they wanted to ask. And man, they're doing a really good job so far. They had great questions.
it's always wonderful to have an expert in-house, to come visit. But I think our goal with having Chris visit is for our students to see that this has the potential to carry them in other career opportunities and other things that they may have never considered.
If I had had something available to me like this when I was in school, I would have absolutely loved it. This is such a wonderful opportunity. The skills that you learn when you are doing podcasts, when you are doing interviewing, asking questions, listening to other people, following up with other questions, the curiosity that is spoke, learning how to kind of put a story together, all of those things are things that are going to help them no matter what they decide to do with their lives. So I think everybody should be taking a podcasting class.
I think I might do it as a little hobby just online.
And I think it's cool that we could do it with them, that I could do with them, and we all can hear them laughing, talking, and stuff.
So then tonight with us, we have Mr. Ackerman, Roxanne Allen, the principal at Chase, Robin Sheffield, and several of the students. Mr. Ackerman, if you'd like to come forward and introduce your students and have them tell us a little more about your new club.
Well, first off, thank you for having us. It's quite the experience for the students. I'm always about real life experiences for our students and getting them out and trying and seeing new things. And that's exactly what this podcasting has been for us. It's been an opportunity for the kids to have a voice in their school and talk about things that are interesting. And we've really focused recently on interviewing, because there are people in our building that kids don't really know or aren't familiar with. So we've interviewed the secretary, we've interviewed Miss Allen, our wonderful principal, we've interviewed Dr. Sheffield. So the kids are able to ask them questions and learn from them and the school. So tonight we have Devon, and I'm just going to talk about Devon real quick. So kids signed up for this on a whim. Like I said in the video, I don't know that many of the kids really knew what podcasting was. And so Devon signs up and we start sitting down during interviews, and he's a natural. He really is. I'd like to get our podcast out in the open so people can listen to them, because it's just, yeah. So it's been with all the kids, but Devon has just really been a natural. And then we have Kyleel, we have Antoine, we have Tyneek, and then today I miss Jalen in the back. He's one of our new members of podcasting. And we actually brought Deanna today. She's a part of our photography club. So if you ever want to feature another club, that's been something else, watching the kids document things like today and things like that. But I'd like to bring up Devon, and I think Tyneek wants to come up as well. And you guys can just share like your experience thus far in podcasting and what you've learned and what you've enjoyed and things like that. Thank you for having us today.
Well, hello, I'm Devon, which he was just speaking about. So, first off, I'm going to say, what podcasting is. You guys probably know it. It's basically just talking about a subject or interviewing a person in a recorded setting, kind of like what we're doing right now, but typically in a sound imposed room. Now, what do I like about podcasting? That is what I'm going to say next. Now, what I like about it is that you get to learn about people, which you've never learned about before. For an example, our administrative assistant at school, Miss Halen, well, I basically didn't talk to her at all, and I knew nothing about it. But I sat down on a podcast one day, and I learned she's not from here. A lot of people at my school are from here, actually. So she was born like a little town, a farm town, and she basically did nothing growing up in her life. She used to say that she just just wander miles away from home and just come back randomly because her mom didn't care. It was like a close-knit farm town, and well, that's actually all I remember for some reason. That just always stuck to me. Now, what else has podcast taught me? Well, it's taught me to be more confident, because old me from around 2 months ago would have been in a fetal position on the floor right now. But here I am talking to you guys, and that's basically all I have to talk about podcasting. My friend Tyneek.
Hi, my name is Tiny, and what do I like about podcasting? I like learning about the stuff that is new and sitting down talking. And it doesn't have to be a serious conversation, and I like how we talk in the room, and that's it.
Thank you so much. Are we gonna take a quick picture, Dr. Duran? I sort of promised him. Thanks again, everybody. We just have one more presentation tonight, and that is to congratulate our retirees, those with 25 years or more of service to Toledo Public Schools. Christy Delph, teacher at Hawkins with 32 years of service. Patrice Parker, miscellaneous laborer at Scott High School with 34.3 months of 34 years, 0.3 months of service. And Patricia Skoloski, food service worker at Start with 40 years of service, and that's a total of 106.3 years to TPS. Thank you.
Yeah, that's incredible. So Chase has left already, but my goodness, they're inspirational. And then, of course, our retirees, we could not do what we do without them. We're going to move on to section 3, which is our community comments. Mr. Sixelty?
The board values the input of citizens and community members regarding all aspects of the district. The board understands that education is the center of all community issues and activities, and that input is important because it allows the board to hear all views on all matters. In order to ensure a quality public comment portion during board meetings, all citizens and community members who are scheduled to speak before the board shall abide by these general rules. 1. Each speaker has 3 minutes unless modified by the board president. 2. The time will be displayed for the speaker and the public to see. The treasurer will announce when time has expired. 3. Any questions that speakers would like responses to should be submitted in writing, and the board president will secure answers within a reasonable time frame, normally 7 to 10 days, depending on the amount of research required to provide a comprehensive response and time-sensitive nature of the question. 4. Board members will not engage in policy dialogue with speakers, but will use their established committee format to have substantive dialogue. The public comment section is the opportunity for the board to listen to all citizens and community members and make contact with speakers following the meeting for individual feedback and questions. The general guidelines are established as a way to provide the maximum opportunity for board members to listen to citizens and community members and provide an organized and structured procedure for feedback that will help our students and families.
Thank you, Mr. Sixelty. The board will call Mr. Matthew Haywood. If you'd like to have a seat, is there a chair up there for you? Okay, all right. If you'd like to grab the microphone? Grab the microphone? Yeah, thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Matthew Hayward. I'm the I have a son in Elmhurst Elementary, and I'll just get right into it. So, I want to talk about what I think is a national public education pandemic. Okay? So, I have traveled the world, in Europe, the Middle East, and throughout America. I'm the founder of Second Law Apps, a software company, and the creator of the Hope Revives initiative. I'm a certified Army instructor, and I taught for 4 years, 10 months in Afghanistan, teaching locals and those within the Department of Defense and NATO, learning, growing, and giving back. It's a lifelong passion. That leads me here today speaking with all of you. Public education is one of the conduits through which society prepares children and young adults to effectively navigate and excel in this ever-changing world. And I should know, as a product of Old Orchard Elementary, Robson Junior High, and Scott High School. At this time of tremendous societal and technological change, the question becomes, how can Toledo Public Schools adequately prepare students for this future? And at the same time, become the educational destination of choice. And not just a choice for those who live within the city limits, but also be a deciding factor for parents who are thinking of calling Toledo home. What I'm advocating for is for Toledo Public Schools to become the standard bearer in education, become what all K-12 public and private schools seek to emulate and aspire to be. But as all of you may well know, before we chart the course for our future success, we must first make an honest assessment of where we are currently. Right now, Toledo Public Schools' math proficiency score is 31%. Our state's public school math proficiency is 63%. Toledo Public Schools reading proficiency is 37%. The state's public school average is 64%. Now, I know that there are reasons. I read an article surrounding this, and I said 4,000 students didn't take the standardized test last year. I understand that. But I look at older data, and it still doesn't bode well for Toledo Public Schools or the city. Now, I know this is not any one person's or group's fault, but we do bear the responsibility for what happens going forward. What do I want to have happen? First and foremost, I know that the success I speak of will not be attained by any one policy change made by Toledo Public Schools. It will take a full community effort. Our students are behind in the very critical areas of reading and math that are necessary not just for their future success, but ours as well. But we will change that. I propose that Toledo Public Schools institute programs to allow professionals into the classrooms on a daily basis to assist and help provide guidance. We can do this now by working with local businesses and organizations and have Toledo Public Schools advocate for them to allow their employees time during the day to volunteer. But even with that, we still can, need to, and have to do more. Our children's lives are at stake, and they are so far behind that the additional help during school will definitely help to raise the bar, but nowhere near where it needs to be. Which is why Toledo Public Schools also needs to reach out to those same businesses and organizations and advocate for them to volunteer after school at community centers, libraries, churches, and any other building where assistance can be given.
Mr. Haywood, your 3 minutes is up.
I understand. I appreciate the time. I have a lot more, but more needs to be done. I have an organization myself. Thank you. I'll be back at 14.
Thank you very much, Dr. Durant. Could you have maybe Mr. Gold reach out to Mr. Hewlett, please?
Yeah, what I'll do is have Mr. Jordan set up a meeting. I could do a Zoom meeting with him, take him through all the exploratory programs we have, all our partnerships and advanced degrees and other things that he may not be aware of. But we have 8 magnet schools that heavily are attended by surrounding area schools as well as private.
Thank you very much. Thank you. At this time, we have organizational input, and this evening, looks like we don't have anyone here for the organizations, so we'll move to comments by the board. Mr. Vasquez.
Yeah, my only comments are to hope that everybody had a good Thanksgiving. We have a few meetings between now and Christmas, so I would wish normally people Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, but we have a couple more meetings scheduled between them. We're going to be busy between now and Christmas, so just want everybody to stay safe.
Thank you. Ms. Eichenberg?
Thank you, Ms. Farway. As my fellow board members know, today I tendered my resignation from the Toledo Public Schools Board of Education, and that's a very sad thing for me. But I always say to the students at graduation, don't be afraid to change your plan and don't be afraid to pivot. And in my personal life, in my private employment, I've added responsibilities, and I've added helping a family business with back office function. And I've just found that I cannot be the effective board member the way I would like to be. And this district deserves people who feel like they are serving in their very best capacity. And given where I'm at now and how the rest of my life is working, I think it is appropriate at this time for me to step away. It has been an incredible 6 years. You all have been amazing in this room. Our staff is amazing. The things we've accomplished have been amazing. We have continued to increase our graduation rate. I think it was pretty horrid when Dr. Durant joined as superintendent, and now we're finally climbing that ladder in the right direction, you know, and really have been seriously for the past 6 to 8 years. You know, 3 of the board members here tonight were here when I joined the board. They have been great mentors. I have learned from each of them. They have been a part of that incredible journey. And Ms. Barnes, who joined us a few years ago, has taught me a lot of things about activism that I have really enjoyed and learned from her. Each board member here will do a great job and makes me optimistic that Toledo Public Schools will continue to head the right direction. I know that the board will, you know, appoint an effective replacement for me and do a good job at that. I'm optimistic for the future of Toledo Public Schools. I will remain a TPS parent. I will always be a TPS proud alumna. And, you know, I'm optimistic because we understand as a district and have understood, everyone I've worked with here, that we have to care for the whole child first, because a child has to feel safe. They have to feel secure before they can learn. And that's tough for many of our children. We understand that we're here for the kids. We're not here for ourselves or political aspirations, which frankly for a school board is amazing. And I love you all for it. So, you know, I know that we're continuing to grow our amazing career tech programs, which I think of as, you know, Toledo Public Schools bringing the world to our children, because some of our children don't get to get out and see the world. So when we bring the world in, it really helps. They learn they can be an airline pilot. They learn they can be someone who builds homes, and they learn that they can be someone who gets their associate's degree before they graduate from high school, because they may not have a lot of money for college, but they can get a step ahead. Those things are amazing and incredible. And the other thing that I would love to acknowledge is that Toledo Public Schools really does have some incredible community support. The rate at which we have passed our levies, our levy renewals, you don't see those numbers anywhere else in the state. They're amazing. And that's because we have worked hard to build partnerships, and we have worked hard to bring people into the schools. Yeah, I do want to thank the staff and the students at TPS for striving to be their best. It's not always easy. I'm a parent of 2 teenagers, and man, I can tell you it is not easy at all. And so many of our families have additional challenges with housing security, with food security, that it's tough sometimes to put education first. And so many of our families still manage to. I'm amazed by that. And for those that don't, it's our job to reach out and help them. And the district understands that. That's not going to change because I'm not here. Okay, people might not get as excited about reorganizing all of our data, but you know, it's still important. And I feel like all of that is on the right trajectory. And now is the time, you know, for the board to carry forward and make sure that we're caring for that whole child, recovering from this pandemic that seems like it might go on forever. And how do we help the kids through that? And so I just really want to say how much I appreciate the students, the staff. I really appreciate everyone in this room so much. I've learned a lot. I've grown, and I hope you've learned a few things from me too. So best wishes to you all, and I'll see you back again the next 2 meetings, and I won't be with you after December 15th. So thank you. Thank you, Ms. Oakenberg. Ms. Barnes? Y'all don't have me crying up here. Stop, y'all too. Stephanie, well, I did learn from you. I just want you to know that you are amazing. Just so intelligent. And I know you know that already. But it really helped me become a better advocate for our school district. So I appreciate that, the time you have shared with me and the knowledge you have shared with me. I will say you will be truly missed after the next 2-3 meetings. We'll see each other. But thank you. Thank you for stepping up to the plate and making that decision to become a board member. Also, as a TPS proud parent, I know sometimes it's not easy, but you did because you have a good heart, and I appreciate that as a parent myself. So thank you.
And also the Chase Academy was amazing and so adorable. I definitely wanted to get his autograph before he left because we're going to see him on SNL or something. I know it. Thank you, Ms. Burns. Ms. Greckin.
So since we've turned this into this particular announcement about your resignation, I think it's fair to say that you're not going to go very far and that you will, I am confident, continue to be pressed into service on behalf of this district. When I met you before you were on the board, you had a seat over there here at Congress. You were presenting to us monthly on the Performance Audit Committee, and in all of that work preceded your service on the board. And I know that one thing we're not going to let you off the hook for is helping us to dismantle and rebuild this notion of a report card in scoring schools according to tests that are flawed. You have helped to explain that to the masses in ways that you just talked about. We don't always think it's fun rearranging data, but the truth is you've helped us understand just how flawed those measures are and how unfair they are to urban districts to score us out with ratings on instruments that just don't hold weight in an urban district. So we're going to keep you working, whether you are ready to sign up for that or not. But like I know you were working before you were on this board, I know you're going to keep working, and we're just not going to let you off the hook. So you may not have an official seat, but we're going to continue to use your expertise because there's a gap there that's just not. It's not a normal skill set. It's not a skill set that just anybody can bring, and we're going to continue to need you for that. So don't worry, we plan on having you around.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the resolution later on in the meeting, but I think it's appropriate to go ahead and do that now. So Ms. Griffin, we'll go ahead and read the resolution.
So this is a walk-in resolution of the Board of Education of Toledo Public Schools accepting the resignation of Stephanie Eichenberg. Whereas Stephanie Eichenberg has been an active and committed board member since she was elected to the board in January 2016, and whereas Ms. Eichenberg tendered her resignation from the Board of Education on November 30th to be effective on December 15th, 2021, therefore be it resolved that the Toledo Public School Board of Education accepts the resignation of Stephanie Eichenberg with the caveat that she's going to continue to be pressed into service at any time that any of us call her for anything at all. Resolved that this resolution shall be in full force and effect from and immediately after its adoption, shall supersede any prior resolution or act of this board which may be inconsistent or duplicative with the provisions of this resolution, and resolved that it is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this board concerning and relating to the passage of this resolution were taken in an open meeting of this board, and that all deliberations of this board and of any of its committees that resulted in such formal action were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
Yeah, I'll start off since you started with me before she did her resignation, which was very unfair, Madam President. I guess I'll turn it to more personal observation. I think everybody's talked about all the things that you brought to the board. And turn it into a personal conversation is that what I'll miss is those many conversations that we've had privately about philosophical approaches, challenges that our students, and that some of the things that you talked about, that we all know that our students have. And your real desire to try to help those students overcome the challenges that they have. And I think sometimes when you serve with a board member and the board member resigns or leaves, you kind of feel like you're losing a soldier in public education. because I think that sometimes that's what we kind of feel like, because so often people do not completely understand the role of public school board members and some of the things that we have to talk about, some of the challenges that we have. But it's been a pleasure discussing those things with you. They're very, very heartfelt. They're very thoughtful. And I think more than anything, I'm going to miss that. And it's kind of everything that nobody else sees because it comes from our heart and things that we're trying to figure out. And we do it together, all of us board members. And I think we're going to miss that. So thank you.
Ms. Barnes?
Well, I already said everything I had to say, but yeah, I'm not gonna cry. Y'all gonna make me cry.
Ms. Bacon?
I just want to echo the personal sentiments that we have truly become friends and we'll continue to have a personal relationship and friendship and watch your kids grow and look forward to handing a diploma out to one of them very soon. It's all of those things that friends and colleagues do after building a relationship.
I would just say ditto because I'm not going to continue to cry. So we're going to call for the vote.
Mrs. Barley,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Mrs. Eichenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Vasquez,
Yes.
Mrs. Gerken.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, that's a rough one, Steph. Nice. Well, we certainly wish Steph the best. Really, and I wasn't going to say anything, but your drive and your passion, your advocacy, especially down at the state level, I will miss immensely. Not that there's not opportunity there, though. But now that the board has accepted Ms. Eichenberg's resignation, we need to begin the process of appointing someone to fulfill her remaining 2-year term on the Toledo Board of Education. I will just simply say who's eligible to apply. Any Toledo resident who lives within the district limits, has an interest in public education, has an interest in public service, has an interest in supporting our students, their families, and our staff, and is ready to roll up their sleeves and continue doing the positive work of Toledo Public Schools, both locally and at the state level. We strongly encourage you to apply for this open seat. Mr. Schulte will make sure that the following gets released out to the media, to the public, on where a letter of interest and resume should be submitted. That would be Mr. Schulte's office. The deadline for submission would be Tuesday, December 7th at 4 p.m. December 7th. We're going to move on to our consent agenda at this time then. Agenda items 6.01 through 6.35 are the consent agenda items. Board members may request to pull an item from the consent and move to the discussion section of the agenda. Item 6.01 to 6.08 is Human Resources. The chair is Polly Taylor-Gerken, co-chair Stephanie Eichenberg. Item 6.09 to 6.14 is Finance. Chair Bob Vasquez, co-chair Chris Warwick. Item 6.15 is Technology Improvements and Process Committee. Chair Stephanie Eichenberg, co-chair Polly Taylor-Gerken. Item 6.16 to 6.19, Curriculum. Chair Polly Taylor-Gerken, co-chair Chris Warwick. Item 6.20 to 6.29 is Policy Committee. Chair Sheena Barnes, co-chair Bob Vasquez. Item 6.30 is Arts, Athletics, and Student Activities Committee. Chair Stephanie Eichenberg, co-chair Chris Warwick. Item 6.31 and 6.32 is Family and Community Engagement Committee. Chair Bob Vasquez, co-chair Sheena Barnes. Item 6.33 to 6.36 are the approval of board meeting minutes. I'd like to request a motion to approve the consent agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Gerken,
Yes.
Mrs. Barley,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Mrs. Eichenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Vasquez.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to section 7 of the agenda consists of reports and minutes from this month's committee meetings and are here for information and reference. No action is required, so we can proceed on to section 8 of the agenda. All right, section 8, the first of 8.01 is the 5-year forecast. Are you playing the video tonight?
We're playing the video tonight.
Okay.
If you want to start the video, that would be great.
Tonight, we will be reviewing the 5-year forecast that needs to be submitted to the Ohio Department of Education. We will first go over the purpose of the forecast, then we'll look at a summary forecast, then we'll look what has changed since the last forecast that was submitted in May. We'll review the impact that COVID has had on the forecast, and then we'll look at the renewal levies that we have coming in the future. The purpose of the forecast is that it gives the Ohio Department and the other state a tool that they can monitor to determine if the school district have financial problems in the future. It also allows the Board of Education Administration to the long-range plan and determine if the funding is there for the plan. The third purpose is that it's the
Okay, well, obviously, none of us can hear it. I don't know about any of you. So we're going to go ahead and have Mr. Sexton present this.
So the 5-year forecast, what we're going to do tonight is we're going to look at a summary forecast. Then we're going to look at changes from the May forecast. We'll review the impact that COVID has had on our forecast. We'll look at the renewal levies and what we're looking at going into the future. The slide that's up there right now. But the purpose of the forecast, as required by law, is that one, it gives the Ohio Department of Education and the auditor state a tool to look at the financial health of our district and other districts across the state. It also is a tool that we use as a board administration to develop our long-range plans and to be able to see, if we can afford Dr. Durant's and projects and so forth. And then the third one is it's the document that's used for the 412 certificate. The 412 certificate is a document that we must sign when we enter into contracts, that we have the funds available to support the contract. Next slide. So the summary forecast here, the black bars are the revenues, the gray bars are the expenses, and the line in the middle is our cash balance. So in fiscal year 21, you'll see that revenues exceeded our expenditures. In fiscal year 22, it's projected to be pretty close to even. 23 is also very close to even. Expenses are starting to creep up. In 24, you'll see expenses exceed revenues, and then you'll see that on the top of the black bar is a little big tan bar. Those three bars on the next top of the three black are renewal levies. So this forecast summary includes them in our, everything I'm showing you is going to assume that they pass. And we'll go over those towards the end of the presentation. So right now, we're projecting at the end of fiscal year 26 that we'll have $41 million as a carryover balance. Next slide. So now we're going to look at what has changed since May. There's really been two major changes. That's been the state funding formula has changed, and also the ESSER funding from the pandemic or COVID has changed. So the major change with the new funding formula is, in the past, we were funded for the students that live in the Toledo Public School District. Starting in the future, or starting for this year, we are being funded by the number of students we educate. So these three bar graphs here show from 19 to 21 that basically we had 32,000 kids that we were funded for, but now we'll be funded for roughly around 22 to 21.6. So the next couple of slides will show you, right? So this first one here, this is what's going to our state aid. So last year we received $242 million in state aid. This next year we're estimating to receive $167 million. Okay, yet. The next slide helps that out. So the next slide here, this is our purchase services. So as you all know already, previously to this year, charter schools, vouchers, open enrollment out, all came out, would flow into the district, and then we would have to expense it out. So when you take those expenditures out of our purchase services, we actually are netting about zero. Actually, I think we increased by like $15,000, but in the grand scheme of things, zero. So that's one of the major changes that was really will affect the district. For the forecast, we are implementing, so the state did not fully fund the new funding formula. So they are phasing it in. We know what it is this year, and we know what we'll receive next year based on the amount of students that we have right now. For the following 3 years, we are using the phase-in that was in House Bill 1 or Senate Bill 1. One of the initial plans came out as on how they were going to phase it in. That could change. So to put that in perspective, if they would fully fund it, that's an additional $19 to $20 million per year for the public schools. Now, if the economy goes bad, they also have the opportunity to increase that because the funding formula is just in a budget bill. It's not in the Constitution or the Charter. So I'll caution you on that. Next slide. So on this slide here, what I'm showing you is on where we receive our revenues. So the inner circle shows 28% from local property taxes. We received 67% from the state, and then all other was 5%. With the new funding formula, that switches to 36% local. State revenue goes to 61%, and other is at 3%. So you can see how the way they changed it. Overall, we're receiving the same amount of money. It just looks like it's coming in from different pots. Here's the same thing for expenses. For 21, the inner circle was 48% for salaries, 20% for benefits, 28% for purchase services, and then 4% for other. And then with the new changes, our salaries are 59%, benefits are 24%, and then you'll see the decrease from 28 to 11% for purchase services and 6% for other. So it just kind of shows you how, when they make changes, how that is affecting where we receive our funding. But overall, we're spending it the same way. Next slide. So this is the COVID impact. With the ESSER funding that we receive, we are able to, based on their rules and regulation and guidelines, pay for expenses that we normally would have had to have paid for out of the general fund. So when the pandemic hit, we had to implement a virtual school quickly. That's roughly costing us about $4.2 million a year. You'll see down further that summer school, and we're estimating that's going to cost us $5 million. That is an increase of probably million than what it was in previous years. You'll see that we have money that we're using to purchase Chromebooks. So every student will receive a Chromebook. We have textbooks. It's a typical one, but what we're doing differently now is we're getting online textbooks. And then the hard-covered ones are actually the what it's called supplemental material. Cybersecurity. With everyone going online and so forth, we need to have some increased cybersecurity. We also have been able to transfer or use $2.8 million for IT, for the servers, Wi-Fi access points, and so forth. So in total, it's going to total about $20 million. And you'll see on the last slide that where we bring the $20 million back in FY25. What this slide here is just saying forecasting is very difficult, especially if it's about the future. I kind of hit on this already where, we know state aid could change. We will be affected just like everyone else is in their household budget if utility costs go up. All these supply chain backlogs right now, which are increasing prices, they're increasing our prices. So we will monitor those, and if they change dramatically or materially, then we'll make adjustments to the forecast. And so that's kind of what that was. Next slide. All right, so this is so go to the next one. So we have 3 levy renewals and 1 levy expiring, and we're going to go over those right now. So you have, right now we have a 6.5 mil levy that generates $14 million. That will be the last year of that being assessed is in 22 for the final year collection in 23. The first time that we are able to go on the ballot to renew that levy is November of 22. So it's coming November. Or we can go in any election in 2023. Next slide. The second one is a 5.8 mil combination levy, where 4.3 mils or $99.7 million is for general operating, and then $1.5 million, which generates $3.4 million, is for permanent improvements. The last year that is assessed right now is 23, able to be collected in 24. November of 23 is the first year we can go on the ballot for that levy or any election in 24. Next slide. We also have a $15.7 million emergency levy. This levy is different than the other two. This is a 10-year levy. So we passed it in 18. So the final year of assessment is 28 for collection in 29. First year we can go on is 28 or any time, or the general election 28 or any election in 29. I bring this one up is because when we're determining our levy strategy, we need to know if we're setting ourselves up for out in 28 and 29. So we know where we're at with that. And then one more slide. So when the district rebuilt quite some years ago now, it seems like, there was a requirement that there's a $500,000 maintenance levy, and that maintenance levy is used to maintain the buildings. When that expires, or the last year of assessment will be in 2024 for collection in 25, we will need to figure out how we want, and currently it is not able to be renewed under current law. I don't know if they didn't think about that when we did that. So we're working on a strategy to figure out how we're going to replace that $500,000 in that area. So now you can scroll back up to probably 4 slides. Yep. So here is the numbers that go behind the forecast. You'll see the renewal levies, what they generate. So the 6.6, the 17, and the 22. You'll see from 24 to 25 on the expenditures, we will go from 334 to 367. That's where we're adding the $20 million back into our general operating. So this will show you that we have $41 million roughly at the end. will still be positive. What I would point out right above that is that our expenses out in 26 are exceeding our revenues by $41 million at this point. Yes, that number alarms me, but you guys do not need to be alarmed by that number because that's 5 years out. And there will be a lot of things that will change between now and then. As we indicated, there's 3 biennium budgets within this forecast. We know one for this year and next year, but the other 2, we have no idea really what they're going to do. So we will monitor it. I'm comfortable where we're at right now. We're working on the levy strategy, but we have a little setback because Mr. Fisher is no longer a levy consultant, so now we are looking for another levy consultant. Dr. Grant and, in fact, 2 companies, right, or 2 firms that we are going to probably look at.
Yeah, the 2 of them are looking at Burgess and Burgess for the Hart group. So those are the conversations we're having now, but we haven't decided anything yet.
So one thing that is not on here, that I want to point it out, if you go back and look at our med forecast, 2025 would have been negative. But with the changes of taking the $20 million and up, we are able to have a positive balance in 26. So that's kind of showing you how things can change fairly quickly when you get out into year 5 or not. So at this point, I will open up for questions.
Mr. Vazquez?
I don't think I have as many questions as I have comments about, the concept of 5-year forecast is something that is past its time. School districts, school boards are one of the few that have to produce a 5-year forecast. Most businesses, and the reason is because the landscape is so dynamic. I think that happens with strategic planning. I remember you used to be able to go out strategic plan for 5 years, and now it's more like 3 years because things change so quickly. What adds on to that, a layer on to what we have to do is that we're at the mercy of the legislature when they do the biennium budgets and what they decide. And I think you pointed out at the beginning of the presentation is that there was a proposal that was made at the beginning, it was changed. We don't know what's going to happen again or next. And so you're making certain assumptions that, they're going to go back to that initial formula that they presented. I'm not sure how good of an assumption that is. There's a lot of debate, a lot of discussion goes on at the state level. What is apparent is that there is more fiscal responsibility at the local level and less at the state level. So I think it's important for people to understand that. It's just that local is having to accept more of that financial burden or responsibility. I think that the other thing that I wanted to point out is that one of the things that's always bothered me is that, ever since I went through campaigns and I was elected, people say, well, government ought to run like businesses, et cetera, et cetera. But then what happens is that they don't believe in carryover. And businesses will have carryover for innovation, for research, for rainy days. But there is an expectation that when you're dealing with tax money, and I understand why there is, but I'm just pointing out something. When you're dealing with tax money, it's money in, money out, money in, money out. And personally, that bothers me because I don't do that. I want to set aside some money, even in my own personal finances, for emergencies, for carryover, to look out into the future. When we do that and we carry over money, then that presents a different problem for us because then people think, well, you need to spend it here, you need to spend it there, whatever. So that always makes me nervous because we get to the point where our expenses outweigh our income, our revenue. I understand that, but I just wanted to say that, that always makes me nervous when we do that. And I guess I say that to caution everyone to say, well, and you present this and say, we're good until, the next, 4 or 5 years. Well, yes, no, because whatever we do is going to have an impact on that. And whatever they do at the state level is going to have an impact on that. And I will tell you, Mr. Sexual, you and your staff have a very difficult job in trying to forecast this on a regular basis. We have a regular monthly finance committee, and they report monthly to us. And that's really important because we got to keep track of this every month. The other thing is we don't know. This is a 5-year forecast. We have no idea what's going to happen. None of us planned for the virus, for COVID. That was probably the furthest thing from our minds that we ever thought that we were going to have to deal with. So we just really don't know how the landscape's going to change. And I have to tell you, I get really nervous about what's around the corner because I feel like we only have a certain amount of control over the future as the school board administration and as school board members. So we have to do the best that we can. I would caution all of us to look at this the best that we can, but try to look out the best that we can into the future. Because I think we have to be to remain, we are already, but we have to remain very good financial stewards. The other thing that complicates this is that the way they set up the school finance in the state with the levies. We always have to go back for a levy. We always have to go back for a levy. And that causes, levy fatigue in our community. It causes us fatigue as well. There should be a better way. We know there can be a better way through finance, education. So, all these things really play into it. I think we're going to have to monitor it on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. But that we all look out into the future, not just look to tomorrow and look at what we need today, which is a very hard thing to do. But I think that we have to be very vigilant and we have to be very assertive about the choices that we make. That's all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Eichenberg? Thank you for, once again, providing 5 years worth of data with only 2 years worth of input for the state. I appreciate that from your team, Mr. Sexual. Thank you, Mr. Ryan, for putting that together. I just can't help but to be an advocate and say to folks who are watching, this is why we need you to look at what's going on at state level, because House bills they're trying to pass to stop us from teaching the truth actually have funding cuts in it as well. House Bill 327 to be exact. So if that does pass and we are teaching diversity and inclusion in our schools, which we are, that means they're cut funding from us. And that means less paras, less special ed teachers, less special speech teachers, just the aid that a lot of our kids need. And as a mother, a youth that's on the autism spectrum, that really frustrates me, that we have to almost play ball to make sure our kids are getting the services that they need. And so I'm asking everyone watching or listening or will watch to start talking and start getting mad at the people at state level for keep doing this to us.
We're not getting rich, we're trying to make our youth rich. And it's a struggle. You know, you can't make change without the change. So, thank you. Ms. Griffin.
I just clarifying question about the old versus new formula in terms of we were once funded for every kid for every youngster that resides in our district, and then we turned around and paid out to those who were going to charter schools, to non-common schools without accountability, you know, all of that. What about those families that went to parochial schools on the original formula? Were we funded for them and then they subtracted once they matriculated in a private school? Just to remind me.
So you're talking they attended kindergarten in a private school, right? Which I understand.
So when you said we were funded by every kid who lived in the district, and then eventually we paid it to wherever they were actually going to school. So we were kind of a flow through. Is that the same with the parochial kids or not necessarily?
But the parochial people, let me rephrase it. They had to register to go to school here. If a parochial student went directly to one of the parochial schools, they never would have been counted in. The ones that would be are the vouchers, the voucher students.
Okay, so it's that notion of a shell game where we were paid for all of the students until they took advantage of one of the ways to take taxpayer money to non-public schools. And that's why it's kind of a wash. So now they're not going to pay us up front for those students. They're going to pay it directly to the place where those students go, which to me is another way to hide what's really happening with your public education dollars in the state. I mean, we didn't like the idea of being the flow through and having to see that money go with the students. But, you know, make no mistake, these funding formulas have agendas as well. And this way they can ship off as much money as they want to vouchers and non-common charter schools with no accountability, and we really never get a look at it. And we never even really get an opportunity to see how much those ineffective programs are growing at our eventual expense. I mean, I know the answer is to have kids enrolled in our schools and to educate them because we firmly believe we can do a better job, and we will continue to do that. But, you know, just this shell game of a formula, I think is another way for them not to be transparent about how they're redirecting money that's intended to be for public schools and increasing the burden on the local share that makes it so difficult for us. It's not lost on us.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. Yeah, I agree with everything that has been said by the colleagues tonight. So I guess I appreciate having sitting on the finance committee so we can go over this a couple times. It's always good to get repeat. I will say that I think it's good that we are looking at all of the levy aspects right now and coming up with a strategy for that, because it does appear per the state and whatever they decide to do with whatever legislation they bring forward, that we're going to have to rely on our local tax dollars more than ever. And that, I guess, is what pains me about the dollars flowing without anyone's eyesight on it per se to vouchers. It's taxpayer dollars, and our taxpayers don't ever get to see where that money is spent, which is why having our tax dollars out there in the open and transparent and showing everyone where we're spending it at is so important. We're doing the right thing, I think.
Madam President?
Yes, please, Ms. Resmus.
One of the things that's important that we haven't mentioned, we're talking about dollars. Those dollars are connected to student performance. And those dollars are not something you talk about in a vacuum. We have to show how they're connected to performance. And I think that's, one of the most important things. A budget to me is a policy statement, because where you put your money is where you determine your priorities are. And Dr. Durant and Mr. Sexolti have been doing a good job of deciding where those priorities are, presenting that to the board, and the board looking at that as a policy. But I think there's nothing more important to this board than making sure that we're good fiscal stewards of the taxpayers' money, and we connect that to the performance and the resources and how we have that go out to try to those ends and those results. So I think that's something that we always have to try to keep in mind. So when people affect our finances and our dollars, then that also affects what we're able to do in performance and programming and the other things. So I think it's just really important that people see that connection. What happens is we often talk about finances like it's in a vacuum. Like, you know, we have this amount of money, we'd have that amount of money. But that amount of money translates into what we have for performance and how we do that. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's obvious attention.
No, great discussion. Anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Sexualty, before I call for motion?
Kind of echo on what Bob said earlier, that we do look at this on a monthly basis in finance. And then the way our system is set up, if we have major changes, it will adjust for the out years so that we can see what's going to happen. So, for instance, in 2020, when in May, the state took $3.6 million back because of the pandemic, we had to adjust all that. So we would look at that in finance, and then if it comes up, and bring it up again. So we do monitor it, actually, of course, daily, but we show it in finance on a monthly basis. So we do monitor that all the time.
Okay, we're good. All right, so then I would request a motion then. So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Barwick,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Mrs. Eichenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Vasquez,
Yes.
Mrs. Gerken.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll move on to 8.02, which is actually a resolution that could also impact our 5-year forecast. So, resolution in opposition to the establishment of a statewide universal voucher program called the Backpack Bill, HB 290. Whereas the establishment of a statewide universal voucher program as introduced in House Bill 290, the Backpack Bill would allow $5,500 for K through 8 and $7,500 for 9 through 12 students to be deposited into an education savings account to be used for private school tuition, tutoring, textbooks, and other uses. And whereas the Backpack Bill would repeal and replace the Ed Choice and Cleveland voucher programs and provide $5,500 to $7,500 to all students, regardless of family's income or location of residence. And whereas the cost of the Backpack Bill is being analyzed, but House Bill 290 will likely cost several $1 billion annually, depending on student participation rates. And whereas in many cases, the vouchers are awarded to students who never attend a public school or never step foot in a public school. Whereas private and charter schools are not held to the same academic or financial standards as the public schools. And whereas in 88% of Ohio cities studied, public school students performed better on state tests than private school students in the 2017-18, 2018-19 school years. And whereas from 2005 to current date, the National Assessment of Educational Progress scores show no difference among public, private, or charter schools. And whereas many students who receive a voucher show a decrease in state test scores during the first 3 years following the transfer. And whereas in many cases, the operators of the private charter schools are driven by profit motives and not educational improvement. And whereas the impact of the Backpack Bill on the future of the Fair School Funding Plan is unknown, but it would constitute a radical defunding of public education and would no doubt be detrimental to further phase-in of the plan. And whereas the impact of the backpack bill on the future of Toledo Public Schools funding is unknown and could require an unnecessary increase in the local funding share. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Toledo City School District that Section 1, the Board opposes HB 290 of the 134th General Assembly to ensure the full phase-in of the Fair School Funding Plan and to avoid a radical defunding of public schools in Ohio. Section 2, the Treasurer is authorized to deliver or cause to be delivered a certified copy of this resolution to community leaders, to members of the Ohio House of Representatives and the Ohio Senate, to the State Board of Education of Ohio, and to the office of Governor Mike DeWine. Section 3, this resolution shall be in full force and effect from and immediately after its adoption, and shall supersede any prior resolution or act of this board, which may be inconsistent or duplicative with the provisions of this resolution. Section 4, it is hereby found and determined that all formal actions of this board concerning and relating to the passage of this resolution were taken in an open meeting of this board, and that all deliberations of this board and of any of its committees that resulted in such formal action were in meetings open to the public in compliance with all legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Ms. Eichenberg.
I would like to read to you a paragraph from Ohio's Constitution. The General Assembly shall make such provisions by taxation or otherwise as with the income arising from the school trust fund will secure a thorough and efficient system of common schools throughout the state. But no religious or other sects shall ever have any exclusive right to or control of any part of the school funds of this state. That's our Ohio Constitution. In no way matches the idea of a backpack bill where you can just take your money and run with it. First of all, the money, a lot of it was raised with the idea that you were voting for public schools. Second of all, there's nothing wrong with religion. Many of our students are religious, but state money going to a religious entity means that once it's out of the state's hands and that check is written, there is no finance committee that publicly meets. There is no record of their forecast. There is nothing that explains what's going on. So that if you object to how these voucher funds, first of all, if you can find out how these voucher funds are being spent, that's first challenge, then you might be lucky. Second of all, if you object to how it's spent, you can complain to that school, who will tell you can complain to whoever is their boss, which is generally going to go back to a private institution, perhaps a religious institution, and they don't have to tell you anything. They don't have to listen, and you cannot vote them out because really, like, I gotta say, you know what? Actually, I love Pope Francis. I think that man is awesome. But you know what? He doesn't care what I think of how a school that is taking a lot of voucher money spends that money. And he doesn't care what Ohio's taxpayer thinks because that's really not his remit. His remit is not to listen to a voter. It's to decide what's best for his church. And ultimately, 90% of this money is probably overseen by that institution. It's insane. I'm sorry. But it's just not right that we send tons and tons of money to private schools and nobody can follow the money trail. And all this bill would do is increase that. It doesn't fit the Constitution, and I'm so angry I can't hit my button. Yeah, and I want to talk just a little bit about the concept that, well, students, they need to be saved from this poor education system. So let's give them the money so that they can just take it anywhere. This standardized testing state report card system is a shell game. It is nothing more than a shell game. You know what you cannot do? You cannot go out and compare our test scores to any of the schools that accept vouchers test scores, unless you are extraordinarily good at data and you can back out data from different parts of the almost useless report card and compare it to a totally different system where students take the same tests, but the data is presented differently. And the reason that data is presented differently is because if you could compare it, you would know that you were throwing away money sending kids to private schools. If you would like to send a child to a private school because you feel that that is best for their character development, that is one thing. But if you would like to send your child to a private school because you think you're getting better academics, it's easy. You can take a local school that gets about, I think it was 86 or it might have been even 88% of their students on a voucher. And you can compare their test scores, this has been done, to the rest of the kids in Toledo, and they're not doing better, they're doing worse. You can take a small little private school that a lot of people send their elementary students to thinking that they're getting a better education. And it's pretty small, it's a cute little school, but if you take and you draw a triangle around it, because it's kind of, you think of it like a neighborhood school, and you include that sort of working class, middle income Toledo public school, and you include in that triangle a really poverty stricken Toledo public school neighborhood. And the other side of that triangle is just a lot of poor kids, maybe not as poverty stricken. And you think, okay, well, that should balance out that demographic. I should be able to compare these test scores. You know what? They're not as good as ours. And so I think it's important that people keep in mind when they look at things like taking my money elsewhere because the education is better. The demographic that most closely correlates with test score performance is a single demographic, and it is income. There is a lot of data now that helps us understand that not just is that correlation there, but when you look at reading comprehension, what a student is exposed to actually does knowledge. So actual knowledge, it's not about can they learn, it's not about have we taught them enough fluency, it's about exposure to the world. When you are poor, it is hard to be exposed to the world. You don't get the same opportunities to get the exposure to the world. And so when we have kids who take these tests and, the breakfast they got was the one we gave them, which is a pretty good breakfast, but it's different because they may not have had that breakfast on Saturday or Sunday. So they come in a little calorie deficient. And then you look at how they score on a test and you say, oh, you know what? They didn't score well on that story about Tony making his bed. They didn't understand it because they don't have a bed. And it's ridiculous. And so when you start to look at this and realize that it's a shell game, what we do with the state tests. And it's a shell game that gets people to think that they should take their kids and their money elsewhere. This just allows them to take that shell game a step further, and it's all built on a lie. So I don't know, I need to stop, but I'm going to talk to those podcasting kids because I think that's my next step in public education. Thank you.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why we're going to miss Ms. Eichenberg on the board. Just one example. Ms. Barnes.
So what I think, and I know my colleague, Ms. Eichenberg, was speaking on is classism and racism. Bottom line about how we look at these scorecards. When we're looking at who is the lowest on these scorecards, if you want to call them scorecards, we're talking about do the families work, or can they afford tutors? Can they afford nannies? Is the family able to stay together? And so usually those areas that score low end are rural and urban areas. It's out there, it's been proven. And so we want what's best for our kids. And as a parent, I know that. And I am not against advocating for your kids to obtain what's best for them. What I'm advocating for as a parent is why should you have that opportunity on the backs of less kids getting less? That's something that we have to think about. Because I want what's best for your students, but I also want what's best for the other kids in my son's classroom as well, and well for my son. If you're thinking about the community, if you're talking about their future, we need to start looking at why do these types of bills select, because also let's talk about that, because when you're looking at, oh, I can pick a new school, they're not picking the ones with special needs. They're not picking the ones, let's be honest, who probably don't have any athletic talent. So once again, back to the classism, racism, discrimination aspect that they're hiding behind these words. They're not going to tell you that anybody can come. They're going to say, oh, we're too full. We have our ratio or our capacity. And I have heard stories and I have seen parents, special needs parents, struggle to get their kids into a different charter school or a private school and be told, oh, I'm sorry, we can't work with your student. So then they come back to TPS where we do our best to give them all the services we can by once again working with pennies. I'm trying to be good here. It's very frustrating because it's up to us. And I know people watching it's like, oh, well, the school board want money. Of course, they're going to want money for TPS, but this is about all our babies. Because I'm mad that your kid is not getting that same education they could be getting at TPS. They're getting less than. Yes, I said it, less than. They're getting bamboozled into thinking they're getting something better because no one can tell what they achieve. So the kids remember something that the teacher taught them, that's excellent. But when it comes to the state testing, they fail worse than our students, but yet somehow we're arguing over who's better when all of our kids are failing. That's something we have to get together. It's not just about your kid, my kid. All our kids are being hurt by bills like this. Once again, we're talking about taking funding from public education when that's supposed to be something we care about as for our youth, to get them education. And if you look at charter schools, and I'm ranting now, if you look at charter schools, because I'm going to be honest, I was one of those parents. I was one of those parents that I didn't feel like I was getting hurt at TPS, so I ran to a charter school with my son, my oldest son. I literally took a birthday present to my son's teacher. By the time I did that, it was a new teacher there. So I said, okay, I'm going to take her an apple, in 2 weeks and welcome her. Somebody else was there in her seat. I said, okay, this is very unstable. So I went to another charter school. And when I tell you I was not heard as a parent, my son was just a number on the bus, guess what I did? I came back to TPS. So I'm not knocking anyone or telling anyone what to do, but I'm telling you I know the truth about what they're not telling you. And we have to start doing our research of these private schools, charter schools, about really what they're offering our students and work to actually help TPS be what we can be for all our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin.
So we've talked about the lack of fiscal accountability when taxpayer money follows students to charter schools and private schools, and we've talked about the lack of actual accountability for the performance and well-being of the students. And I'm reminded that once again at our board meetings this whole year, I can't think of a month that we aren't spending time resolving to be against something that the state is doing to public education. This is an assault on public education. It's concerted and it's constant and it's coming at us so fast and furiously, from making it impossible for us to meet our fiscal obligations to making it impossible for us to teach the truth without further erosion of our fiscal capabilities, to literally endangering children with rules and laws about what has to be disclosed if a child comes to us regarding their sexual identity and putting children at risk. And that is coming to us from our state lawmakers. It's a constant assault. We should be concentrating on getting kids reading, getting kids into career tech programming that's really going to set them up for life, and doing all of those things. We do it all day, every day. We're getting it done in spite of or despite this constant assault. But imagine what we could do if we were spending more time on those topics and less time as full-time lobbyists against state bills. How many times have people on this panel gone to testify this year on bills in the State House or written testimony on bills in the State House? How many times has Dr. Durant written testimony on bills at the State House? How many times has he had to gather with the big city school superintendents and employ lobbyists in order to stop this assault on public education from the state? It's really exhausting, and I feel the weight of it between my colleagues every time we have to debate another one of these bills and resolve to oppose it. And so hopefully we can continue to do that, and it will eventually be heard and will make a difference.
Thank you. And while I agree with everyone here, I will just say I've not heard from any legislator that has asked the question, what happens to a family that takes a voucher and then the school decides that that student is no longer really welcome at that school and the child still needs to graduate, but yet we can't even get the transcripts because we're busy fundraising to try and cover the tuition that the parent is stuck with, or they have to file bankruptcy so their child can walk on graduation day. It's exhausting. Month after month, we bring a resolution forward in opposition to something that the state is putting out. And I don't understand the lack of logic, the lack of empathy for our families. I guess I'm kind of a Pollyanna. We're supposed to work with our state in the betterment of our district and our community and our students. And I do not see that happening at the state level. So while I agree with you, Ms. Barnes, about advocating, I want our community and other communities to start endorsing and backing legislators that actually care about public education and vote them in and vote these folks out. With that said, we've motioned and seconded and had discussion, and Treasurer, can you please call for the vote?
Mrs. Barwick,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Mrs. Eichenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Vasquez,
Yes.
Mrs. Gerke.
Yes.
Thank you. 8.03 is our winter organizational meeting date and time, and I thought it'd be appropriate to go ahead if we could schedule that for January. Ms. Eichenberg, obviously you won't be looking at your calendar for that. So get your calendars out real quick and we will go ahead and set that up. Usually, we do it the first week in January. It's usually Tuesday or Thursday. Okay. So does everyone have, and the first day back to school is the 4th, is that correct? Okay, so maybe, yeah, probably shooting for the 6th. So I know the first day is always, there's a lot going on, right? Does everybody have the 6th open? Yes, okay. So we'll go ahead and set that for 5:30. Okay. Yep, 5:30 on January 6th. All right, hopefully by then we will have another board member in play. All right, so section 9 is our early childhood education items, and the chair is probably the Griffin, co-chair is Sheena Barnes, and I will turn it over to Ms. Griffin at this time.
And Dr. Allen, these are just some contract changes, right? Or
Yeah, these
updates.
are contracts for our delegates for our third budget period for this grant, which starts it starts tomorrow. So these are the contracts that will take them through November 30th of 2022.
Okay, so we can bundle these, so I'll just go ahead and make a motion for items 901 and 902.
So moved. Seconded. Hearing any discussion? All right, Tricia, please call the roll.
Mrs. Barway,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Mrs. Eichenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Vasquez,
Yes.
Mrs. Gerken.
Yes.
Okay, section 10 of the agenda consists of early childhood education reports and minutes from this month's committee meetings and are provided for your information and reference. No action is required, so we can proceed to section 12 because it doesn't look like there's any walk-ins for early childhood. Okay. Section 12. Dr. Grant, you've heard a lot from the board tonight, so this is your time for comments.
And I just want to welcome each of you back from the fall break. Also in regard to great announcement in regard to the pre-med health and science academy. Within 24 hours, we were only hoping for 75 seats. We have well over 100 to about 150 applicants immediately within the first day. So we're excited to see that. Next announcement obviously going to be the Natural Science Tech Academy, which is coming on board. We're just waiting for a part that's based on slowdown for the supply chain management code. So we're hoping it gets here, and we'll be able to bring out that next announcement. And then Ms. Eichenberg, again, thank you for all that you do, continue to do. And again, we'll continue to tap into your knowledge base as you have done thus far. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grant. Mr. Schulte.
Yeah, I just want to thank Steph for being on the finance committee. And if you ever want to help school finance, you just give me a call.
All right, thank you. And board members, one last time. Mr. Vasquez?
Yeah, I don't know if we've ever, I'm sure we've done it, but when we're talking about finances, just reminds me of how well Dr. Durant, Mr. Schulte, and your staff have navigated the situation that we've been in with the coronavirus and trying to deal with the unknown and the unexpected. So I just want to let you know we appreciate that, because as people can see, we're in pretty good financial condition, even with all of that was going on. So just want to let you know I appreciate it.
Ms. Eichenberg. Ms. Barnes.
So first I'd like to acknowledge that our sign language interpreters are not here with us this evening. However, it will be recorded and a translator will interpret our meeting for us. And secondly, I know this is a hard time around the holidays with a lot of things going on. So I just wanted to encourage everyone to take care of their mental health and try to look for that small silver line of something to smile about today.
Ms. Gerken.
I just like the sound of my voice on a microphone. So with that, they're listening to the young people today. That really was, I didn't get a chance to come in on. We really do, for me, when the students are here or we're hearing anything firsthand, what's going on in our buildings, absolutely makes our night and just makes me very happy. I want to see that the video shared widely on social media so that I can TPS proud tag it along the way. And we've got a lot more work to do. As you mentioned, Mr. Vasquez, I think 3 more board meetings this month, which is unusual. Well, 4 in December, right? Or 3 in December. 3 in December, 4 because this is already December, right? So 4 altogether in 30 days. It's a lot with vacations and everything. So we'll be seeing a lot of each other, get the end of the year business out of the way and be ready for the new year eventually. Thanks, everyone.
And I'll just say that, I don't know about you, and I'm sure that our staff, because I've heard a lot from them over the break, actually, and they were just so appreciative that they had the week. I know everybody needed it, even just a little bit to recharge. And so I hope that everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving spent with family and friends, safely, obviously. But I also want to mention Chase STEM Academy. Again, I love that school. They're just rock stars over there. And I have to mention one of the teachers, Miss Williams, because she does this wonderful wonderful program over there where you can sign up to adopt for the holidays a family and provide gifts that maybe otherwise the kids might not get. So, you know what, I love that program. I will continue to do it each year. And just going to give a shout out to her. So that's the type of dedicated staff that we have. I also am pretty excited because I was just asked to judge a door contest. So when you feel back, I'm coming at you. I know, right? Love that school. Anyways, that's it for tonight. I will ask for an adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
So,
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Barley?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mrs. Eichenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Vasquez?
yes.
Mrs. Gerke?
Yes.
Thank you.